The sun hung merciless in the bleached sky above Dust Creek, painting long shadows across the dirt road that served as the town's main artery. It was the kind of heat that made men consider their sins. Though most folks in this corner of Arizona territory had given up on redemption long ago. Ethan Cole rode into town on a horse that looked as worn as its rider. Dust clung to his dark coat, his hat pulled low against the glare. He'd been riding hard for 3 days, putting distance between himself and trouble that had a way of following a man like gospel follows a preacher. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, swept the ramshackle buildings lining the street, a general store, a church with a crooked steeple, and the Rosewood Saloon, which stood out like a painted lady at a prayer meeting. The saloon sign creaked in the hot wind, and through the bat-wing doors came the tinny sound of a piano struggling through a waltz. Ethan touched the brim of his hat, habit more than courtesy, as a woman in widow's weeds hurried past, clutching her parcels like shields against the sight of him. He was used to that look, the quick assessment, the quicker dismissal. A drifter was trouble, and trouble was something Dust Creek had in short supply. Inside the Rosewood Saloon, Clara Rosewood wiped down the bar with practiced efficiency, her movements sharp and purposeful. At 23, she'd inherited her mother's beauty and her father's stubborn streak, a combination that left most men in town either intimidated or infatuated. Her auburn hair was pinned up proper, though a few rebellious strands had escaped to frame her face. She wore a practical blue dress, high-necked and modest, but it couldn't quite hide the fire that burned in her hazel eyes. "Clara, darlin', when you gonna stop playing barmaid and let a real man take care of you?" Thomas Blackwood's voice oozed across the room like oil on water. He sat at his usual table, cards spread before him, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the rough-hewn cowboys nursing their whiskey. Clara didn't look up from her work. "When I find one worth the trouble, Mr. Blackwood." The men at the bar chuckled, but Blackwood's smile tightened. He was a man who collected things: land, cattle, debts, and he'd decided months ago that Clara Rosewood belonged on that list. "Your father's getting on in years," Blackwood continued, shuffling his cards with manicured hands. "This place could use a man's touch." "Seems to me it's got plenty of men's touches already," Clara replied, gesturing at the tobacco stains and boot scuffs marking the floor. "What it could use is men with manners." Before Blackwood could respond, the doors swung open. The late afternoon sun threw the newcomer into silhouette, but Clara didn't need to see his face to know he was different. It was in the way he moved, careful, deliberate, like a man who'd learned that sudden movements got you killed. Ethan stepped into the relative cool of the saloon, his spurs singing a lonely song against the floorboards. The room fell quiet, that particular hush that descended when strangers appeared in places where everyone knew everyone else's business, sins, and shoe size. "Whiskey," he said, his voice rough from road dust, "and information about a room for the night." Clara found herself studying him as she reached for a bottle. His face was weathered but not old, maybe 30, with a scar running from his left eyebrow into his hairline. His clothes were quality beneath the dust-good leather, well-oiled holster, boots that had seen miles but were cared for. This was a man who understood that in the territories, your gear could mean the difference between living and dying. "Room's $2 a night, paid in advance," she said, pouring amber liquid into a glass. "Bath is extra, so's not asking questions." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Just the room and the drink." Their fingers brushed as she slid the glass across the bar, and Clara felt something electric pass between them. She pulled her hand back quickly, unsettled by the sensation. His eyes met hers gray, yes, but with depths that spoke of storms weathered and roads traveled. "You're new." Blackwood's voice cut through the moment. "We don't get many visitors in Dust Creek. Most folks just pass through." Ethan turned slowly, taking Blackwood's measure with a glance. "Most folks have somewhere else to be." "And you don't?" Not presently. Clara watched the exchange with growing unease. Blackwood had a way of making trouble for men he saw as competition. And something in the way his eyes narrowed told her he'd already categorized this stranger as a threat. Name's Blackwood. Thomas Blackwood. I own the Double B Ranch north of town. He didn't extend his hand. And you are? Tired, Ethan replied, turning back to his drink. A few men snickered, but Blackwood's face darkened. He wasn't used to being dismissed, especially not in front of Clara. Clara, honey, why don't you come over here and bring the bottle? I'm sure our friend Mr. Tired would enjoy some proper hospitality. The bottle stays at the bar, Clara said firmly. House rules. She saw Ethan's eyes flick to her, something like approval in their depths. Most men either tried to protect her from Blackwood or encouraged his attention, hoping to curry favor. This stranger did neither. The moment stretched taut until the saloon doors burst open again. This time, 3 men stumbled in, trail-worn and mean-looking. Clara's heart sank. She recognized the type drifters who'd been sampling liquid courage and were now looking for trouble to match their mood. Well, well, the largest of them drawled, his words slurred. If it ain't a pretty little filly serving drinks, how about you come pour us some of that rot gut, sweetheart? Gentlemen, Clara said, though they were anything but. I'll be happy to serve you once you check your guns with my father. House rules. The big man laughed. An ugly sound. Hear that, boys? The lady thinks we're going to give up our iron. He swayed toward the bar, his companions flanking him. How about instead? You pour us drinks and we'll decide what rules we follow. Ethan hadn't moved, hadn't even looked up from his whiskey. But Clara saw his shoulders tense, saw the almost imperceptible shift that brought his gun hand free. The lady asked you to check your weapons, Ethan said quietly. The big man turned, squinting at this new player. This ain't your concern, stranger. You're right. Ethan took another sip of his whiskey. But I'm trying to enjoy my drink in peace, and you're making that difficult. Maybe you should find another place to drink. Maybe you should find another town to pollute. The words were mild, but something in Ethan's tone made the air crackle with potential violence. Clara's hand drifted toward the shotgun her father kept beneath the bar. You got a death wish, mister? The big man's hand hovered near his pistol. Ethan finally looked up, and Clara saw why men might cross streets to avoid him. His eyes had gone cold, empty as winter sky. I've got a lot of wishes, friend. Dying ain't one of them. But if you pull that iron, you'll be making wishes of your own, last ones, most likely. The tableau held 3 men aching for a fight, one man calmly finishing his whiskey, and Clara with her fingers wrapped around a shotgun stock. The other patrons had suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere, leaving chairs scraped back and drinks abandoned. Jake, one of the smaller men, tugged at the leader's sleeve. Maybe we should... Shut up. Jake's face had flushed red, whether from whiskey or rage. Clara couldn't tell. This saddle tramp thinks he can... The sound of a hammer cocking cut through his words. Clara had lifted the shotgun, its twin barrels pointed at the ceiling but ready to drop. Gentlemen, my father runs a peaceable establishment. You can check your guns and enjoy our hospitality, or you can move along, but you'll do one or the other in the next 10 seconds. Jake looked from Clara to Ethan and back again. Something in their combined resolve seemed to penetrate his whiskey-soaked bravado. This ain't over, he growled at Ethan. It never is, Ethan replied. The 3 men backed out of the saloon, Jake's eyes promising future violence. Only when the doors stopped swinging did Clara lower the shotgun, her hands trembling slightly. Obliged, Ethan said, finishing his whiskey. I can handle myself, Clara replied, though her voice wasn't quite steady. Never doubted it, but 3 against 1 ain't favorable odds, even with a scattergun. She studied him, this strange man who'd inserted himself into trouble that wasn't his. Most men would have let them have their way, or tried to play hero. I'm not most men. He placed coins on the bar. About that room. Clara found herself smiling despite the lingering tension. Up the stairs, second door on the right, and Mr. Cole, Ethan Cole. Mr. Cole, thank you, though I suspect you just made some enemies. Won't be the first time. He touched the brim of his hat. Evening, Miss Rosewood, Clara Rosewood. Miss Rosewood. He headed for the stairs, then paused. Those men, they'll be back, probably with friends. I know. You always that calm under pressure. You always that handy with implied threats. This time his smile was fuller, transforming his face. Only when necessary. As his footsteps faded up the stairs, Clara realized she was still watching the empty doorway. Blackwood's voice brought her back to the present. Interesting fellow. You're Mr. Cole. Wonder what he's running from. What makes you think he's running? Men like that are always running from something. Darlin', question is whether it'll catch up to him here. Clara turned away, busying herself with cleaning glasses. But Blackwood's words lingered like smoke in the air. Ethan Cole was trouble. That much was certain. The question was whether he was the kind of trouble Dust Creek needed, or the kind that would leave everything in ashes. Outside, the sun continued its relentless journey toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, and somewhere in the growing shadows, Jake and his men nursed their wounded pride and plotted revenge. In his room, Ethan stood at the window, watching the street below. He'd planned to rest here one night, maybe two, then move on. But something about Clara Rosewood's steady gaze and steadier hands made him reconsider. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to make a stand. Or maybe he was just a fool who'd forgotten that standing still made you an easier target. Time would tell. In the territories, it always did. The morning came too soon, bringing with it the acrid smell of smoke and the thunder of hooves. Clara jolted awake in a room above the saloon, her heart already racing before her mind caught up with what her senses were telling her. Those weren't the usual sounds of Dust Creek waking up. She threw on her robe and rushed to the window. In the street below, a dozen riders circled like vultures, their torches casting dancing shadows on the buildings. Jake stood at their center, his ugly grin visible even from her vantage point. Cole! Jake's voice boomed through the dawn air. Ethan Cole, come on out and face justice like a man. Clara's blood ran cold. Justice in the territories. That word was often just a prettier name for revenge. A door opened down the hall, and she heard measured footsteps. Ethan's. She grabbed her father's old Colt from her dresser drawer and stepped into the hallway, nearly colliding with him. He was fully dressed, as if he'd never slept, his gun belt already buckled. Get back in your room, he said quietly, his eyes never leaving the window at the end of the hall. This is my home. I'm not hiding while men die over wounded pride. He finally looked at her, and she saw something unexpected in his eyes, regret. This isn't your fight. It became my fight when I pointed that shotgun at them. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Stubborn. Practical. You can't face 12 men alone. Wouldn't be the first time. Before Clara could respond, her father's voice joined Jake's in the street. Now hold on there. Jake, there's no call for this. Whatever grievance you have, shut your mouth, old man, Jake snarled. That saddle tramp in your flea-bitten saloon pulled iron on me and mine. In my book, that demands satisfaction. Clara started forward, but Ethan caught her arm. Wait! That's my father, and he's trying to buy time. Smart man. Ethan moved to the window, studying the scene below. They've got men covering both ends of the street. 2 on the rooftops. No, 3. He turned back to her. Is there another way out? The back stairs, but... Good. Get your father and anyone else out that way. I'm not leaving you to... The crash of breaking glass cut her off. A torch sailed through the saloon's front window, followed immediately by another. Within seconds, smoke began billowing up through the floorboards. "Fire!" someone screamed from the street. "The saloon's burning!" Clara raced for the stairs, Ethan right behind her. The main room was already filling with smoke, flames licking greedily at the whiskey-soaked wood. Her father stood behind the bar, trying desperately to beat back the flames with a wet blanket. "Pa, we have to go." "My saloon, Clara! Help me!" "Sir, the building's lost." Ethan grabbed the older man's shoulders. "But your daughter doesn't have to be..." Something in Ethan's tone cut through Samuel Rosewood's panic. He looked at his daughter, then at the spreading flames, and his shoulders sagged. "The cash box, under the bar." Ethan dove behind the bar, emerging with a metal box just as another window exploded inward. More torches, more flames. The heat was becoming unbearable. "Back door!" Clara shouted over the roar of the fire. They stumbled through the smoke, Clara leading the way through the familiar layout. Behind them, she could hear Jake and his men whooping like savages. Her home, her inheritance. Everything her mother had helped build, all of it turning to ash because of one man's wounded pride. They burst into the alley behind the saloon. Clara expected to find it empty, but 3 men waited there, guns drawn. Not Jake's men, these wore badges. "Sheriff Morrison," Samuel wheezed. "Thank God. Those men..." "I know what happened. Sam." The sheriff's weathered face was grim. "But I can't have gunplay in my town, Mr. Cole. I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." "You're arresting him." Clara couldn't believe what she was hearing. "They're burning down our saloon. And I'll deal with them in due time. But right now, I need to prevent a massacre." Morrison's hand rested on his pistol. "What's it going to be?" "Cole." Ethan studied the sheriff for a long moment. Clara could see him calculating odds, measuring distances. Then he slowly raised his hands. "I'll come peaceful, Sheriff, but those men will be handled according to the law." Clara heard the lie in those words, and from Ethan's expression, so did he. But he nodded and allowed one of the deputies to take his guns. "This ain't right," Clara said. "He defended himself. He defended us." "Clara," her father's voice was heavy with defeat. "Let the sheriff do his job." She watched helplessly as they led Ethan away. He looked back once, his gray eyes finding hers through the smoke and chaos. "Be smart," that look seemed to say. "Stay safe." But Clara Rosewood had never been particularly good at either. An hour later, she stood in the ashes of her life. The saloon was a blackened skeleton, wisps of smoke still rising from the ruins. A small crowd had gathered, some offering condolences, others just gawking at the destruction. "It's a shame." Thomas Blackwood's smooth voice made her skin crawl. He'd appeared at her elbow like a well-dressed vulture. All this could have been avoided. "How do you figure that?" Clara asked, not bothering to hide her contempt. "Well, if certain people had minded their own business, Jake and his boys would have had their drink and moved on. No harm done." "No harm," Clara turned on him. "They were threatening me." "High spirits, nothing more. Men get that way sometimes. A wise woman knows how to handle such situations with diplomacy." "You mean submission?" Blackwood shrugged. "I prefer to call it pragmatism. Speaking of which..." He produced a leather folder from his coat. "I took the liberty of having some papers drawn up. A fair offer for the land, more than fair, considering there's nothing left but ash and debt." Clara stared at him. "The ashes aren't even cold." "Business waits for no one. My dear, your father's getting on in years. You have no income now, no home. I'm offering you a way out, a respectable way out." "The deed's not for sale?" "Everything's for sale, given the right circumstances." His smile was cold. "Think about it, Clara. Without the saloon, how will you pay your father's debts? How will you eat? I'm offering you a chance at a real life. My wife would have the finest dresses, the best of everything. You'd never want for anything. Except freedom and respect and love. Love, Blackwood laughed. Love is a luxury for fools and poets. This is the real world. Clara, in the real world, security matters more than sentiment. Before Clara could respond, shouts erupted from the direction of the jail. She turned to see Jake and his men surrounding the building. Her heart sank. Of course, why face justice when you could simply take what you wanted? Looks like your friend Mr. Cole is about to face his own pragmatic choice, Blackwood observed, though I doubt he'll be as fortunate in his options as you are. Clara didn't think. She just moved, running toward the jail. Behind her, she heard Blackwood call out, "The offer stands, Clara, but not forever." The scene at the jail was chaos. Jake's men had guns trained on the building while Jake himself stood on the wooden sidewalk, shouting threats. "Send him out. Morrison, this is between him and us." "Go home, Jake," the sheriff's voice came from inside. "You've done enough damage for one day." "We ain't even started that sidewinder pulled on us. Where I come from, that's a killing offense." Clara pushed through the crowd that had gathered. She needed to find a way to help, but how? Then she spotted something that made her blood run cold. Two of Jake's men were dragging something from their horse's rope, a lot of rope. Lynch mob. They weren't planning on a fair fight. They were planning an execution. "No!" The word tore from her throat before she could stop it. Jake turned, his piggy eyes lighting up when he saw her. Well, the little Spitfire. Come to watch your boyfriend swing." "You can't do this. It's murder." "It's justice." Jake spat in the dirt. "Frontier justice, the only kind that matters out here." Clara's mind raced. She needed help, but who would stand against 12 armed men for a stranger? Then inspiration struck. It was dangerous, possibly foolish, but it might be their only chance. She squared her shoulders and raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Jake Henderson, I challenge your account of what happened." The crowd murmured. Jake's face darkened. "You calling me a liar, woman?" "I'm saying you were drunk and disorderly. You threatened me in my own establishment." "Mr. Cole intervened on behalf of a lady's honor, by the code of the West. That makes him a gentleman and you a coward who hides behind numbers." The murmuring grew louder. Honor, especially a lady's honor, still meant something in the territories. Some of the men in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Jake's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. "You little—" Furthermore, Clara pressed on, her voice carrying the authority she'd learned from years of managing rowdy customers. "If you truly believe justice is on your side, prove it. Face Mr. Cole in a fair fight, one-on-one. Or admit you're nothing but a yellow-bellied bully who needs 11 men to back his play." The crowd was fully engaged now. Someone shouted, "She's got a point!" Another called out, "Fair fight! Let's see a fair fight!" Jake looked around, realizing he was losing control of the situation. His reputation, such as it was, hung in the balance. "Fine," he snarled. "Bring Cole out here. We'll settle this proper. When I'm done, there won't be enough left of him to bury." Sheriff Morrison emerged from the jail, his face grim. "Clara, what have you done?" "What you wouldn't," she replied. "Given him a chance." Ethan appeared in the doorway, his hands still bound. He looked at Clara with a mixture of admiration and exasperation. "You just can't help yourself, can you?" "Apparently not." Morrison reluctantly unlocked Ethan's shackles. "This is against my better judgment." "Most things worth doing are," Ethan replied, rubbing his wrists. Jake had moved to the center of the street, his hand hovering over his gun. "Come on, Cole, unless you're yellow." Ethan stepped down from the sidewalk, moving with that same deliberate grace Clara had noticed the night before. "Terms." "Terms," Jake laughed. You draw, I draw. One of us dies. Those are the terms. Fair enough. Ethan positioned himself 20 paces from Jake. When you're ready. The street had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Clara found herself praying to a god she'd half forgotten, bargaining for the life of a man she barely knew. Jake's hand twitched, then moved. Fast, but not fast enough. Ethan's draw was like lightning made flesh. His gun cleared leather and spoke once, the sound cracking through the morning air like divine judgment. Jake's weapon had barely cleared his holster when the bullet took him high in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him in the dirt. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jake groaned, clutching his shoulder. Alive. Ethan had placed his shot precisely, disabling without killing. Anyone else? Ethan asked quietly, his gun still in his hand but pointed at the ground. Jake's men looked at their fallen leader, then at each other. Without Jake's bluster to drive them, they were just hired guns facing a man who'd proven himself their better. One by one, they backed away. Get him to the dock, someone suggested. 2 men lifted Jake, who was cursing and moaning in equal measure. Sheriff Morrison stepped forward. Cole, you'll still need to... Sheriff! Blackwood's voice cut through. I believe Mr. Cole has proven his case. It would be unwise to pursue this matter further. Clara stared at him. Why was Blackwood taking Ethan's side? Morrison clearly wondered the same thing, but he nodded slowly. I suppose you're right. Cole, you're free to go, but I want no more trouble. Wasn't looking for any to begin with. Ethan replied. As the crowd dispersed, Clara found herself alone with Ethan in the street. He holstered his weapon and looked at her with those storm-gray eyes. That was a fool thing you did. You're welcome. I didn't say I wasn't grateful. He glanced at the smoldering ruins of the saloon. I'm sorry about your home. It was just wood and whiskey. But her voice caught on the words. No, he said softly. It was more than that. It was your mother's dream, wasn't it? The life she built. Clara looked at him sharply. How did you... The way you moved behind that bar, like you'd learned it at someone's knee. The care in every gesture. That's not hired help. That's legacy. Tears she'd been holding back threatened to spill over. It's gone. Everything's gone. Not everything. He gestured at the crowd. At the town. You stood up for what was right. Made men remember what honor means. Your mother would be proud. Proud doesn't rebuild saloons. No, but it builds something better. Character, reputation, the kind of things no fire can burn. Clara met his eyes, seeing in them an understanding born of his own losses. What do I do now? Whatever you have to. That's what survivors do. Is that what you are, a survivor? So far. He touched the brim of his hat. Take care. Clara Rosewood. And stay away from men like me. We're nothing but trouble. He turned to go, but Clara caught his sleeve. Ethan, where will you go? Wherever the wind takes me. The wind's been known to circle back. A real smile this time, transforming his weathered features. So it has. As he walked away, Clara stood in the ruins of her old life, Blackwood's offer heavy in her pocket. She had choices to make. Decisions that would shape her future. But somehow, watching Ethan Cole's retreating figure, she felt like the most important choice had already been made. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the morning cool, and in her heart, a different kind of fire began to burn. The weeks following the fire passed in a blur of soot and sweat. Clara and her father had taken rooms at Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house. Their proud independence reduced to charity meals and sympathetic looks. But Clara Rosewood had steel in her spine, inherited from generations of women who'd carved lives from unforgiving land. She found work at the general store, her hands that once poured whiskey now measuring flour and folding fabric. The pay was meager, barely enough to keep them fed. But it was honest work. Every evening she'd walk past the blackened bones of the saloon, planning and dreaming of rebuilding. Ethan Cole hadn't left town as she'd expected. He'd taken a job at the livery stable, his skilled hands gentle with horses and harsh with troublemakers. They passed each other on the street with polite nods and careful distances. But Clara felt his presence like electricity before a storm. "You're mooning again." "Mrs." Abernathy observed one evening as Clara helped with dinner preparations. The older woman's boarding house kitchen was warm and flour-dusted, a sanctuary of normalcy. "I don't moon," Clara replied, kneading bread dough with perhaps more force than necessary. "Child, I've seen enough young women to know mooning when I see it. That Cole fellow's a handsome devil, I'll grant you, but he's got danger written all over him." "I'm not interested in Mr. Cole, and I'm the Queen of England, Mrs." Abernathy chuckled. "Just be careful, dear. Men like that leave scars." That Saturday, Dust Creek celebrated its monthly dance at the church social hall. Clara hadn't planned to attend, but Mrs. Abernathy insisted, practically shoving her into her best remaining dress, a deep green that had survived the fire by virtue of being at the laundress. The hall blazed with lantern light and laughter. Fiddle music spilled into the night, and Clara found herself swept into the familiar rhythms of community. For a few hours, she could forget about debts and ashes. "May I have this dance?" Thomas Blackwood materialized at her elbow, resplendent in a new suit. "I'm not dancing tonight, Mr. Blackwood." "Come now, Clara, the whole town's watching. Would you have them think you're pining?" Before she could respond, he'd guided her onto the dance floor. His hands were possessive, his cologne overwhelming. "You look lovely tonight," he murmured, like a woman who deserves better than poverty. "I'm managing fine." "Are you? Your father coughs more each day. Winter's coming, those boarding house walls are thin." He spun her, pulling her closer than propriety allowed. "My offer still stands. Marriage, Clara, security, comfort. All you have to do is say yes. And all I'd lose is myself." Melodramatic. You'd lose nothing but stubbornness. The song ended, but Blackwood didn't release her. Clark felt trapped, surrounded by watching eyes and wagging tongues. Then a hand tapped Blackwood's shoulder. "Mind if I cut in?" Ethan stood there, cleaned up and wearing what must have been his best shirt. The transformation was startling. He looked less like a dangerous drifter and more like the man he might have been before whatever had driven him to the territories. Blackwood's grip tightened. "We're not finished." "The lady looks finished to me." Ethan's voice was mild, but his eyes held that same steel Clara had seen during the confrontation with Jake. For a moment, the two men locked gazes, a silent battle of wills. Then Blackwood released her with a sharp laugh. "Of course, enjoy your dance with the stable hand. Clara, when you're ready for a real future, you know where to find me." He strode away, leaving Clara facing Ethan as a new song began a slower waltz. Without a word, he offered his hand. She took it. They moved together with surprising grace. His hand at her waist was firm but respectful, maintaining proper distance even as something electric hummed between them. "Thank you," she said softly. "You looked like you needed rescuing." "I told you before, I can handle myself." Never doubted it. Sometimes handling yourself means accepting help. They danced in silence for a moment, aware of the eyes upon them. The good wives of Dust Creek would have gossip for weeks. "You stayed," Clara finally said. "Job opened up." "That's not why." He looked down at her, those gray eyes unreadable. "No, it's not." "Then why?" "Same reason you're dancing with me when you should be keeping your distance. Sometimes the smart choice and the right choice aren't the same thing." The music swelled, and he spun her. For a moment, she felt weightless, free from the burdens of expectation and propriety. When he pulled her back, they were closer than before, close enough that she could see the pulse at his throat, smell the soap and leather scent of him. "People will talk," she whispered. "Let them. It could hurt your reputation." "What reputation? I'm already the dangerous stranger who brought trouble to town." "You didn't bring it. It followed you." Same result. His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Clara, you should know." But whatever he was going to say was lost as the music ended. They stood frozen for a heartbeat, unwilling to break apart. Then reality crashed back. Clara stepped away, aware of the stares and whispers. "I should check on my father." "Clara," his voice stopped her. "Save me another dance." She looked back at him, this dangerous man who made her feel reckless and alive. "We'll see." The night wore on, a blur of music and forced conversations. Clara danced with others, the banker's son, the deputy sheriff, even gruff old Mr. Patterson from the freight company. But her eyes kept finding Ethan, who stood at the edge of the crowd like a wolf among sheep. As midnight approached, she stepped outside for air. The desert night was cool and vast. Stars scattered like spilled silver across the sky. She walked toward the old cottonwood tree behind the hall, seeking solitude. But she wasn't alone. Ethan emerged from the shadows, moving with that uncanny silence of his. "Following me, making sure you're safe," Blackwood left in a temper. "I'm not afraid of Thomas Blackwood." "Maybe you should be." He moved closer, and Clara's heart began to race. "He's not a man who takes rejection well." Speaking from experience, speaking from observation, I've known men like him. They think the world owes them whatever they want. "And what kind of man are you?" He was close now, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "The kind who knows better than to want things he can't have. Can't or shouldn't. Both." The tension between them crackled like lightning seeking ground. Clara knew she should step back, return to the safety of the dance. Instead, she reached up, her fingers brushing the scar above his eyebrow. "How did you get this?" His breath caught. "Clara, tell me. Bar fight in Tombstone. Man accused me of cheating at cards." "Were you?" "No, but my brother was." "You have a brother. Had." The word fell heavy between them. "He died that night, trying to protect me from my own fool attempt to protect him." Clara's hand moved to cup his cheek, feeling the tension in his jaw. "Ethan." "This is a mistake," he said, even as he leaned into her touch. "Probably. You deserve better than a man with blood on his hands and ghosts at his back." "Maybe I don't want what I deserve." The words came out fiercer than she intended. "Maybe I want." She never finished. One moment they were standing apart. The next, she was in his arms, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him down. The kiss was nothing like the chaste pecks she'd experienced at church socials. This was fire and demand, years of loneliness and want compressed into a single moment of connection. His arms banded around her, lifting her against him as he backed her against the cottonwood's trunk. She gasped at the contact, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until she couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't remember why this was forbidden. Her hands moved of their own accord, tugging at his shirt, needing to feel skin and warmth and life. Buttons scattered in the dirt as she tore the fabric, revealing the hard planes of his chest, marked with scars that told stories of survival. "She ripped his shirt," he gasped against her mouth. "Hell, Clara, you'll make me lose my mind." Then he buried his face in the curve of her neck, breathing her in like a drowning man seeking air. She held him there, feeling the tremor that ran through his strong frame, understanding that this wasn't just desire, but a desperate need for connection, for proof that they were both still alive despite all they'd lost. "Clara," her name was a prayer and a plea. "We can't, not here, not like this." She knew he was right, knew that anyone could walk out and find them, but her blood sang with want, and her hands wouldn't release their grip on his shoulders. "I know," she whispered. "I know, but—" "Shh." He lifted his head, cupping her face with gentle hands. "You deserve courting, flowers, pretty words, all the things I don't know how to give. I don't want pretty words. I want truth. The truth." His thumb traced her swollen lips. "The truth is you scare me more than any gunfight ever has. The truth is I should ride out tonight before I ruin you." "And will you—" "I should." "That's not an answer." He rested his forehead against hers. "No, God help me. No, I'm not that strong." A burst of laughter from the hall made them both freeze. Reality crashed back the impropriety of their position, her hands inside his ruined shirt, his body pressing hers against the tree. They separated reluctantly, Clara trying to smooth her hair while Ethan attempted to hold his shirt closed. In any other moment, it might have been comic. "Your reputation is my concern," Clara interrupted. "I'm not a child. Ethan, I knew what I was doing." "Did you? Because I'm not sure I did." He ran a hand through his hair. "Clara, I've got enemies. Men who'd use you to get to me. Oh, like Jake. Jake was nothing, a bee sting compared to what's coming." "What's coming?" He looked away. "The past always catches up. Mine's been riding hard behind me for months." "Then face it. Stand and fight." "It's not that simple." "It never is." She straightened her dress, trying to look like she hadn't just been thoroughly kissed against a tree. "But running hasn't worked either, has it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "No, it hasn't." "Then stay. Whatever comes, we'll face it. His smile was sad. "Clara, there is no we. There can't be." "Because you say so. Because caring about me is dangerous. Ask my brother. Ask the woman in Kansas who—" He cut himself off. "Who what?" "Nothing. Someone I couldn't save." Clara studied him in the moonlight. This complex man with his layers of guilt and honor. Maybe you're not supposed to save everyone. Maybe sometimes you're supposed to let them save you. He laughed, short and bitter. "With what good intentions and determination?" "With faith, with partnership, with—" She stopped, the word love dying unspoken. "Too soon, too much." "You should go back inside," he said quietly. "People will notice you're gone." "I'll let them notice." "Clara," his voice held a warning. "Please." She saw the struggle in his face, the war between want and conscience. With a sigh, she stepped back. "This isn't over." "It has to be." "We'll see." She turned to go, then looked back. "Your shirt's ruined. You'll need to slip out the back." Despite everything, he smiled. "Worth it." She left him there in the shadows and returned to the dance, her lips still tingling, her body still humming with unspent desire. She danced and smiled and deflected questions about her flushed cheeks, all the while feeling his presence like a brand on her skin. Later, as she helped clean up, "Mrs." Patterson leaned close. "Saw you dancing with that Cole fellow." "Along with half a dozen others." But he's the one who put that glow in your cheeks." The older woman's eyes were knowing. "Be careful, child. Fire that burns that hot tends to consume everything in its path." Clara thought of Ethan's hands in her hair, his body pressed against hers, the desperate hunger in his kiss. Maybe some things are worth burning for. "Mrs." Patterson shook her head. "Young folks, always thinking you're the first to discover passion? Just remember, dear ashes are all that's left when the burning's done." As Clara walked home through the empty streets, she touched her lips, still feeling the echo of his mouth on hers. Mrs. Patterson was probably right. This thing between her and Ethan Cole was dangerous, possibly destructive. But as she looked up at the stars, vast and eternal above the desert. She couldn't bring herself to care. She'd lived safe her whole life, and where had it gotten her? Homeless, nearly penniless, with nothing but respectability to keep her warm. Maybe it was time to burn. The morning after the dance, Sheriff Morrison knocked on Ethan's door at the boarding house before dawn. Ethan answered fully dressed, as if he'd been expecting trouble. "Sheriff, early for a social call." Morrison's weathered face was grim. "Got a telegram last night. Thought you should see it before the whole town starts talking." He handed over the yellow paper. Ethan read it, his expression never changing, though Clara, watching from her doorway down the hall, saw his knuckles whiten as he gripped the paper. "How long before they arrive?" Ethan asked. "Telegraph says they passed through Tucson yesterday. That puts them here by tomorrow, maybe the day after." "And you're telling me this, why?" Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "You saved Jake from himself with that shoulder shot. Could have killed him easy. Man who shows that kind of mercy deserves a warning. Or you're hoping I'll run and save you the trouble." "That too," Morrison admitted. "But something tells me you're done running." After the sheriff left, Clara approached Ethan's room. "Who's coming?" He looked at her, and she saw resignation in his eyes. "The past I mentioned." "Stop talking in riddles. Who are they?" "The Garrison brothers, Marcus and Wade. They believe I killed their younger brother in Kansas." "Did you?" "No, but the woman who died trying to protect me was their sister-in-law. In their minds, I might as well have pulled the trigger." Clara felt cold despite the morning warmth. "How many?" "The brothers, plus whoever they've hired. Could be 6 men, could be a dozen. We'll face them together." "No." His voice was sharp. "This is my fight. Clara, my ghosts to lay to rest." "Like hell." She pushed past him into his room, noting the sparse possessions, the gun oil on the dresser, the Bible worn from handling. "You think I'll stand by while I die?" He closed the door behind her. "That's exactly what you'll do. Because if they see you matter to me, they'll use you. The Garrisons don't just want me dead, they want me to suffer first. Then we make sure they don't get what they want." "Clara." He caught her shoulders. "Listen to me. These aren't drunk cowboys like Jake. These are killers, professional manhunters, the kind that burn down orphanages to flush out one man." "Then why face them at all? Why not run?" "Because I'm tired." The admission seemed to cost him. "Tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of leaving good things behind because they might catch up, tired of being a ghost in my own life." Clara touched his face, feeling the tension there. "What happened in Kansas?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I was tracking a man who'd robbed an army payroll. Led me to a farm outside Abilene. The Garrison brothers' youngest, Tommy, had taken up with a widow named Sarah. She was hiding the thief, her brother." He moved to the window, staring out at the awakening town. "I tried to take him peaceful, but Tommy went for his gun. In the chaos, Sarah stepped between us, took a bullet meant for her brother. Tommy went crazy, came at me. I had to—" "You had to defend yourself." "Tell that to Sarah's children. Tell that to Tommy's brothers." His laugh was bitter. "The thief got away in the confusion. I stayed with Sarah until the end. Tried to explain to the Garrisons when they arrived, but grief doesn't listen to reason. It wasn't your fault. Fault doesn't matter when you're the one left standing." He turned back to her. "That's why you need to stay away from me. Why whatever this is between us has to end. You don't get to make that choice for me." "Don't I?" He moved closer, backing her against the door. "What if I told you the Garrisons like to send messages? What if I told you about the saloon girl in Dodge who got too close to me? They didn't kill her, that would have been merciful. They marked her, scarred her so everyone would know she'd been touched by someone they hated." Clara's breath caught, but not from fear. "You're trying to scare me." "I'm trying to save you." "I don't need saving. I need—" She stopped, frustrated by her inability to articulate the fierce want that consumed her. "What?" His voice was rough. "What do you need?" "You," she whispered. "Damn you, Ethan Cole, I need you." He kissed her then, desperate and demanding, as if trying to compress a lifetime into a moment. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "One more day," he said. "Give me one more day to prepare. Then, when they come, you stay hidden. Promise me." "I can't." "Promise me, Clara, or I leave now." She saw he meant it. "I promise to be careful." "That's not—" "That's all you get." She kissed him once more, softly. "One more day." The rest of that day passed intense preparation. Word spread quickly through Dust Creek trouble was coming. Some folks boarded up their shops. Others suddenly remembered urgent business in other towns. Thomas Blackwood made one last attempt to claim Clara, arriving at the general store where she worked. "This is madness," he said without preamble. "Come with me to my ranch. You'll be safe there. From the garrisons or from you." His mask slipped, showing the cruel calculation beneath. "Does it matter at my ranch? You'd be protected, comfortable. Here, you're just another casualty waiting to happen. If I'm going to be a casualty, I'd rather it be on my feet than on my knees." "Proud words. Let's see if you're still so proud when the shooting starts." He leaned closer. "When Cole's dead and he will die, make no mistake, remember that I offered you a way out. When Ethan faces the garrisons, he won't be alone." Blackwood laughed. "You think the good people of Dust Creek will stand with a stranger against professional killers? You're more naive than I thought." But Clara had already seen the signs. Old Pete at the livery stable had started cleaning his ancient buffalo rifle. Mrs. Abernathy had sent her nephew to the minister's house with a message. Even Doc Morrison had been checking his ammunition. Dust Creek might be small, might be fearful, but Ethan had saved them from Jake's gang. Some debts demanded payment. That evening, Clara found Ethan at the ruins of the saloon, standing amid the charred timbers and ash. The sunset painted everything in shades of blood and gold. "Seems appropriate," he said without turning. "Everything I touch turns to ash eventually." "Self-pity doesn't suit you." "Neither does optimism. But here we are." He faced her. "I want you to know something. These weeks since I rode into Dust Creek, they've been the closest to peace I've had in years." "Then fight for them. Fight for us." "There is no us, Clara. There's just a dream that ends tomorrow." She moved to him, anger flashing in her eyes. "Stop it. Stop acting like you're already dead. Stop pushing me away because you're scared." Scared. He caught her wrists as she reached for him. "I'm terrified. Not of dying, I made peace with that possibility years ago. I'm terrified of living, of believing I could have something good and then losing it." "Then don't lose it." Her voice broke. "Don't lose me." His control shattered. He pulled her against him, his mouth finding hers with desperate hunger. They clung to each other amid the ashes of her old life, passion and sorrow mingling like smoke and flame. When they finally parted, the stars were emerging. "Where will you be tomorrow?" he asked. "Where I need to be." "Clara." No more words. She pressed her fingers to his lips. "No more goodbyes. Just be careful." She left him there, knowing it might be the last time. As she walked back to the boarding house, she saw them shadows moving in the darkness, men taking positions, checking weapons. The town was preparing for war. In her room, Clara opened her mother's trunk, the one thing that had survived because she'd stored it at the church. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, lay her mother's pistol, a .32 caliber Smith & Wesson that her mother had called her insurance policy. "A woman needs to be able to protect what's hers," her mother had said, teaching young Clara to shoot out behind their old house. Her home, her family, her heart. Don't let anyone tell you different. Clara cleaned the weapon, loaded it, and tucked it into her skirts. Ethan had made her promise to be careful. He hadn't made her promise to stay away. That night she barely slept. Every sound could be horses approaching. Every shadow could be death arriving early. When dawn finally broke, it came blood-red and ominous. The Garrison brothers arrived just after breakfast. They rode in like something out of a nightmare. 6 men in dark dusters, faces hard as granite, death in their eyes. Marcus Garrison, the elder, had a preacher's face gone wrong, all righteous fury and cold judgment. Wade, younger and meaner, wore his cruelty like other men wore cologne. They stopped in the middle of Main Street, and Marcus's voice boomed out, "Ethan Cole, we've come for justice. Face us like a man, or we'll burn this cesspit down around you." Clara watched from the general store window as Ethan emerged from the boarding house. He'd dressed all in black, like a man attending his own funeral. His gun sat easy on his hips, and his face showed nothing, no fear, no anger, just deadly calm. "Marcus, Wade." He stopped 20 feet from them. "Been a while." "Not long enough." Wade snarled. "You killed Tommy. Killed Sarah." Sarah died because she stepped into a gunfight. Tommy died because he wouldn't drop his weapon. I take no pleasure in either death. "Pleasure." Marcus dismounted, his hand hovering near his gun. "You took our brother from us, took a mother from her children. Your pleasure doesn't interest me. Only your blood will balance the scales." "Then take it, but leave the town out of this. These people have done nothing." "Neither had Sarah," Wade spat. Clara saw Ethan's jaw tighten, the only sign of emotion. "No, she hadn't, and I'll carry that weight forever. But adding more innocent blood won't bring her back." "Maybe not," Marcus said, "but it might help us sleep at night." The tension stretched taut. Clara gripped her hidden pistol, knowing she was too far away to help if shooting started. Then, unexpectedly, another voice joined the conversation. "Gentlemen," Sheriff Morrison stepped out of his office, shotgun cradled in his arms. "This is my town. Any killing that happens here goes through me first." Wade laughed. "You planning to arrest us, old man?" "Planning to keep the peace. You want Cole, take him, but you'll do it legal. A fair fight, witnessed proper." "We've got no quarrel with you, Sheriff," Marcus said. "Stand aside." "Can't do that. See, Mr. Cole here is a resident of Dust Creek. That makes him mine to protect until proven guilty of something. He's guilty of murder. According to you, according to him, it was self-defense. Seems like the kind of thing that should be settled proper." Other doors began opening. Pete emerged with his buffalo rifle. Doc Morrison appeared, medical bag in one hand, pistol in the other. Mrs. Abernathy's nephew and 3 friends took positions on the hotel roof. The Garrisons looked around, calculating odds. 6 men against a town wasn't impossible, but it would be costly. "You people don't know what you're protecting," Marcus said. "This man's a killer, a destroyer of families." "Maybe," Mrs. Abernathy called from her porch. "But he's our killer, and we take care of our own." Clara felt a surge of pride. Dust Creek might be small, might be afraid, but it had found its backbone. Marcus's face darkened. "So be it. Cole, I challenge you. Single combat. You win, we ride away. I win. My brother takes his turn. Then the men we hired, until one of us is satisfied or you're dead. And if I refuse, then we wait, and anyone who helps you becomes our enemy too." Ethan looked around at the townspeople who'd risked themselves for him. Clara saw the moment he made his decision. "I accept, but we do this proper, outside town where no innocents can be hurt." "The old mine road," Sheriff Morrison suggested. "Plenty of room, no ricochets." Marcus nodded. 1 hour. Don't run. Cole, we'll find you, and we'll make it worse." The Garrisons rode out, leaving silence in their wake. The townspeople slowly dispersed, some shaking their heads, others checking weapons. Clara rushed to Ethan. "You can't face them all." "I can't let them hurt anyone else because of me." He touched her face gently. "This was always going to end this way." "No." She gripped his shirt. "We'll find another way." "We'll—" "Clara." His voice was gentle but firm. "Some fights can't be avoided, only faced." She wanted to scream, to rage against the stupid honor that would take him from her. Instead, she pulled him down for a fierce kiss, pouring all her fear and love and determination into it. "Don't you dare die," she whispered against his lips. "Don't you dare leave me." "I'll do my best." He smiled sadly. "But if I don't make it—" "You will." She stepped back, squaring her shoulders. "Because I'll be there." "Clara, no." But she was already walking away. Plans forming. She'd promised to be careful. She hadn't promised to abandon him. The hour passed too quickly. As Ethan rode out toward the mine road, Clara slipped out the back of the boarding house. She had her own horse saddled, her mother's gun loaded, and a determination that burned hotter than the desert sun. The Garrisons might have come for justice, but Clara Rosewood was coming for something stronger, love, and heaven help anyone who stood in her way. The old mine road stretched out like a scar across the desert landscape. Abandoned equipment and rusted tracks, testament to dreams that had died under the harsh sun. Ethan arrived first, dismounting near a cluster of weathered rocks that provided minimal cover. He checked his weapons methodically, the Colt .45 on his right hip, the backup .38 in his shoulder holster, the rifle in his saddle scabbard he hoped he wouldn't need. The Garrison brothers and their hired men were already there, spread out in a loose semicircle. Marcus stood in the center, having removed his duster to reveal a black vest over a white shirt, like some perverse reversal of a preacher's garb. "Thought you might run," Marcus called out. "Never was much good at running," Ethan replied, stepping into the open. Sheriff Morrison had followed with several townspeople as witnesses. They positioned themselves on a rise, safely out of the line of fire. Ethan didn't see Clara among them, which gave him both relief and worry. "Terms," Morrison called out. "Simple," Marcus said. "He faces each of us until he's dead or we're satisfied justice is served. And if Cole wins—" Wade laughed, ugly and sharp. "He won't!" Thomas Blackwood had arrived as well, sitting his expensive horse like a vulture waiting for the feast. His presence made Ethan's skin crawl, though he couldn't say why. "Let's get this done," Ethan said, taking his position. Marcus squared off against him, hand hovering over his gun. "For Tommy," he said. "For Sarah. For the children who cry for their mother." "I'm sorry for their loss," Ethan said quietly. "Sorrier than you'll ever know." "Save your apologies for hell." The desert wind stilled. Even the buzzards circling overhead seemed to pause. Time stretched like molten glass, each second an eternity. Ethan's world narrowed to Marcus's eyes, watching for the tell that would— Marcus moved, fast, practiced, the draw of a man who'd killed before and would again. But Ethan was faster. His gun cleared leather and spoke once, the sound cracking across the desert like judgment. Marcus's shot went wide as Ethan's bullet took him in the right shoulder, spinning him around. The older Garrison brother dropped to one knee, gun falling from nerveless fingers. Marcus Wade started forward, but one of the hired guns held him back. "It's done," Ethan said. "He's alive, but out of the fight." "Not done," Wade snarled. "My turn." Ethan holstered his weapon, knowing there was no avoiding this. Wade was younger, faster, fueled by rage where Marcus had been driven by cold purpose. As the brothers switched places, Ethan caught movement among the rocks to his left. His heart sank even as it swelled. Clara, of course she hadn't stayed away. He should have known that promise meant nothing to a woman who'd point a shotgun at armed men for principle. Wade didn't bother with words. The moment he was in position, he drew, no warning, no honor, just killing intent. Ethan barely got his gun clear before Wade's first shot creased his ribs, burning like a brand. He fired back, but Wade was already moving, diving behind a boulder. "Face me!" Ethan called out, pressing a hand to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. "Like you faced Tommy." Wade popped up, fired twice, then ducked again. Ethan rolled behind a rusted ore cart as bullets sparked off metal. This wasn't a duel anymore. It was a hunt, and he was bleeding. "The agreement was a fair fight," Sheriff Morrison shouted. "This is fair," Wade called back. "He's armed. I'm armed. Nothing says I have to stand still and let him shoot me." More gunfire erupted, but not from Wade. The hired guns had spread out, taking positions. This was about to become a massacre. Then Clara's voice rang out, clear and strong. "That's enough!" She emerged from the rocks, her mother's pistol trained on the nearest hired gun. This was supposed to be about honor, justice, not murder. "Clara, get back!" Ethan shouted, but she ignored him. "Miss Rosewood," Blackwood called out. "You're interfering in lawful business. I suggest you shut your mouth, Thomas." Clara's voice could have cut glass. "I know why you're here, why you've been pushing so hard. The land deed, my father's land, connects your ranch to water rights you've been after for years." "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation if it's true." She kept her gun steady. "How much did you pay them?" "Thomas, how much to ensure Ethan died, and I'd have no choice but to accept your protection." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Wade had stopped shooting. "You brought these killers here," Clara continued. "Fed them information, probably told them exactly when Ethan would be alone, vulnerable." "Prove it," Blackwood said, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. "I don't have to prove it." Clara smiled coldly. "They do. Tell me, Mr. Garrison, who told you Ethan Cole was in Dust Creek? Who sent that convenient telegram?" Marcus, still clutching his wounded shoulder, looked between Blackwood and Clara. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You son of a—" "Now! Now!" Blackwood drew his own weapon, a pearl-handled revolver more suited to a display case than a fight. "Let's not be hasty. There's a solution here that benefits everyone. Cole dies. You get your revenge, I get the land, and Miss Rosewood, well, accidents happen in Crossfire." "You'd kill her too," Wade emerged from cover, disbelief on his face. "Casualties of justice," Blackwood said. "Besides, who'd mourn a woman who threw away her virtue for a gunslinger? That was his mistake. The Garrison brothers might be killers, but they had a code. Killing women went against everything they'd been raised to believe." "We came for Cole," Marcus said slowly. "Not innocence." "She's hardly innocent. Probably spreading her legs for him The crack of Clara's pistol cut him off. Blackwood's hat flew from his head, and he went pale as death. "The next one goes lower," Clara said pleasantly. "Much lower." The tableau held hired guns uncertain, the Garrison brothers reconsidering, Blackwood trembling with rage and fear, and Ethan bleeding behind his ore cart. Then everything exploded into chaos. One of the hired guns, nervous and twitchy, fired at Clara. Ethan erupted from cover, shooting as he moved. Clara dove behind rocks as bullets whined overhead. The witnesses scattered. Sheriff Morrison shouting for order, no one heeded. Wade, caught between loyalty to his brother and disgust at Blackwood's betrayal, made a choice. His gun swung toward the hired killers instead of Ethan. Nobody shoots women on my watch. The battlefield shifted. Alliances redrawn in blood and principle. Ethan found himself fighting alongside the man who'd come to kill him, both protecting the woman who'd changed everything. A hired gun tried to flank Clara's position. Ethan's shot took him center mass, dropping him like a stone. Another rushed Ethan, and they grappled in the dirt, fighting for control of a weapon. Clara's precise shooting drove back a third who'd been drawing a bead on Wade. Through it all, Blackwood retreated toward his horse, shouting orders no one followed. "Kill them all, I'm paying you to kill them." Not anymore. Marcus, despite his wound, had retrieved his gun left-handed. His shot took Blackwood in the knee, sending the would-be land baron screaming into the dust. The remaining hired guns, seeing the tide turned and their employer down, made the practical choice. They backed toward their horses, hands raised. "We're out," one called. "This ain't our fight anymore." Sheriff Morrison, who'd taken cover with the other witnesses, emerged with his shotgun. "Anyone moves wrong, I'll cut you in half. Weapons down. All of you." The sudden silence was almost as shocking as the gunfire had been. Ethan stood swaying, blood running down his side, gun still trained on the surrendering gunman. Clara picked her way through the battlefield to reach him. "You're hurt." "I'm alive." He caught her as his knees buckled. "That's more than I expected." Wade approached cautiously, his weapon holstered. "This true what she said about Blackwood?" "Ask him yourself," Clara said. But Blackwood had passed out from pain and blood loss. Marcus, supported by one of the witnesses, joined them. "We came here for justice. Seems we were played for fools." "Your brother's still dead," Ethan said quietly. "So is Sarah. Nothing changes that." "No," Marcus agreed. "But maybe it wasn't all on you. Sarah always did try to protect those she loved, even when they didn't deserve it." Tommy drew first. Wade said suddenly, "I never wanted to admit it, but he drew first. You tried to talk him down. I heard the witnesses after, when I wasn't listening through grief." Ethan closed his eyes. "I dream about it every night. If I'd been faster, better, maybe—" "Maybe nothing," Marcus interrupted. "Man makes his choices. Tommy made his, Sarah made hers, you made yours. Time we all lived with them instead of dying for them." Sheriff Morrison and his makeshift deputies had the hired guns secured. Doc Morrison was already working on Blackwood, who'd regained consciousness and was babbling about his rights and his lawyers. "Ethan needs attention," Clara said, feeling the warm blood soaking through her dress where she supported him. "Just a graze," Ethan protested. "A graze that's bleeding like a stuck pig." Doc Morrison appeared with his bag. "Let's get you back to town before you bleed out being stoic." As they prepared to leave, Marcus approached one last time. "This isn't finished. Not entirely, but maybe it doesn't have to end in more killing." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we'll ride on, take Blackwood's blood money and disappear. You'll never see us again. But if you hurt more innocents, if we hear you've gone back to your old ways—" "I won't." Ethan looked at Clara. "I've got reasons to stay straight now." Wade spat in the dust. "A woman's not much reason." "The right woman is every reason," Marcus corrected, something almost like understanding in his eyes. "Take care, Cole. Don't make us regret this mercy." The Garrison brothers mounted up, Marcus riding despite his shoulder, Wade supporting him. They collected their payment from Blackwood's saddlebags, gold that would have bought Ethan's death, and rode out without looking back. "Well," Sheriff Morrison said, watching them go, "that's not how I expected this to end." "Justice is a funny thing," Clara said, still holding Ethan upright. "Sometimes it looks different than we imagined." They loaded Ethan onto a wagon, Clara refusing to leave his side. As they headed back to Dust Creek, Blackwood secured in another wagon under guard. Ethan caught Clara's hand. "You promised to be careful." I didn't get shot." "Clara." "Shut up, Ethan. You're not allowed to lecture me while bleeding." He squeezed her hand weakly. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first. I'd say we're even." "No," he said, his voice fading as blood loss took its toll. "Not even close. I owe you everything." "Then live," she said fiercely, tears she'd been holding back finally falling. Live and pay me back with a lifetime? As the wagon rolled toward town, toward help and healing and hope, Clara held tight to Ethan's hand and believed for the first time since the fire that maybe they'd both found something worth fighting for. Behind them, the desert reclaimed the battlefield, wind already covering the blood with dust, and somewhere in the vast blue sky, a hawk cried wild and free and alive. The first thing Ethan became aware of was the smell of lavender and linen, so different from the usual sense of gunpowder and dust that had marked his life. The second was pain, a dull, throbbing ache in his side that spoke of damage and healing in equal measure. The third was a gentle hand holding his, warm and steady as a heartbeat. He opened his eyes to find Clara dozing in a chair beside the bed, her auburn hair falling loose around her shoulders, shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. The room was simple but clean Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house, he realized, though not his usual sparse quarters. "You're awake." Clara's eyes fluttered open, hazel depths focusing on him with relief that made his chest tight for reasons that had nothing to do with his wound. "How long?" "3 days. You lost a lot of blood, Doc Morrison said." Her voice caught. "He said it was touch and go for a while." "Takes more than a bullet to kill me." "Don't." Her hand tightened on his. "Don't joke. Not about this. I thought—" She stopped, composing herself with visible effort. "You nearly died. Ethan, for me, for this town, for people who barely knew you." "Worth it," he said simply. Tears spilled down her cheeks then, and she leaned forward, pressing her forehead to their joined hands. "You impossible, stubborn, wonderful fool." He freed his other hand, ignoring the pull of bandages, to stroke her hair. "Hey now, no tears. I'm too mean to die easy." She laughed through her tears, lifting her head. "Promise. Promise." A knock at the door interrupted whatever she might have said next. Sheriff Morrison entered, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. "Sorry to intrude. Heard you were awake. Cole, thought you should know Blackwood's been singing like a church choir. Trying to cut a deal. Admitted to bringing the garrisons here, funding them, planning to force Miss Clara into marriage for her land." "What will happen to him?" Clara asked. "Judge is coming from Tucson next week. With what we've got, Blackwood's looking at significant time in territorial prison. His assets will be seized to pay damages." Morrison shifted his weight, including compensation for the saloon he orchestrated burning down. Clara sat straighter. "Compensation?" "Enough to rebuild, if you're so inclined, with plenty left over." The sheriff almost smiled. "Seems Mr. Blackwood was wealthier than we knew, and the territorial government takes a dim view of men who hire killers to terrorize honest folk." After Morrison left, Clara and Ethan sat in silence, processing this reversal of fortune. "You could rebuild," Ethan said finally. "Make the Rosewood Saloon even grander than before." "I could." She studied their joined hands. "Or I could do something else. Something new." "Like what?" "I don't know yet. Maybe something that doesn't involve serving whiskey to men who can't hold their liquor." She looked up at him. "What about you? What will you do when you're healed?" He'd been dreading this question. "I figured I'd move on. You're safe now. Blackwood's dealt with. The garrisons won't be back. No reason for me to—" "No reason." She pulled her hand away. "No reason to stay. Clara, I risked my life for you. Held vigil for 3 days. And you're talking about leaving. It's what I do. Who I am." "No." She stood, pacing to the window. "It's who you were. The question is who you want to be." Before he could answer, the door opened again. This time it was Samuel Rosewood, Clara's father, looking older but steadier than when Ethan had last seen him. "Daddy," Clara said, surprised. "You should be resting." "Heard our patient was awake. Wanted to thank him proper." The older man approached the bed, extending his hand. You saved my daughter, saved our town. Man does that. He's family in my book. Ethan shook his hand, feeling oddly moved. Just did what needed doing. That's what heroes always say. Samuel's eyes twinkled. Course, heroes also usually have sense enough to court a woman proper before getting shot over her. Daddy! What, man's lying here bleeding? Might as well speak plain. He winked at Ethan. Though, from what I hear, my daughter did some shooting of her own. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Mother would have been proud, Clara said softly. That she would. Your mother faced down claim jumpers with nothing but a scattergun and attitude. You've got her spine, girl, and her heart. He patted Ethan's shoulder. You heal up, son. We've got plans to make. After he left, Clara returned to her chair. Some of the tension eased. He likes you. He doesn't know me. He knows enough. You stood when you could have run, bled when you could have bargained. That tells a man's character better than any words. They fell into comfortable silence, the afternoon light slanting through the windows. Ethan found himself studying Clara's face, memorizing the way the sun caught gold in her hair, the determined set of her jaw, the gentle curve of her lips. You're staring, she said without opening her eyes. Just thinking. About how a man knows when to stop running. Her eyes opened, hope flickering in their depths. And maybe when he finds something worth standing still for. She leaned forward. Ethan Cole, are you trying to tell me something? I'm trying to tell you I'm scared. The admission came hard. I've been moving so long, I don't know how to stop. Don't know how to be the man you deserve. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for you, here, present, willing to try. And if I fail, then we'll fail together. She took his hand again. That's what partners do. Partners. He tested the word. Found he liked the shape of it. In what? Everything, business, life. Her voice dropped. Love, if you'll let me. Clara, I love you. The words came out in a rush. I know it's too soon, too fast, too everything. But I almost lost you, and I won't waste more time on proper courtship and social expectations. I love you. Ethan Cole, scars and ghosts and all. He pulled her down for a kiss, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you too. God help me, I do, but... No buts. She kissed him again. Softer. Just love, we'll figure out the rest. The next days passed in a blur of healing and planning. The town, energized by their stand against Blackwood and the garrisons, threw itself into preparations for rebuilding. But not just the saloon, there was talk of a new school, improved roads, even a proper doctor's office for Doc Morrison. Ethan improved daily, though Clara wouldn't let him rush. She was there every morning with breakfast, every evening with dinner, and often through the night when fever dreams of Kansas haunted him. Sarah says thank you, he mumbled one night, half delirious. Says you're taking good care of her boys. Clara smoothed his hair back, understanding that grief and guilt could tangle with fever. Rest now. You're safe. Safe. He caught her hand. Never been safe before. Feels strange. Good strange or bad strange? Good. Scary good. She stayed with him through the night, singing soft songs her mother had taught her, until the fever broke with the dawn. As Ethan grew stronger, he and Clara began making plans. Not for the grand saloon Blackwood's money could build, but for something different. A hotel. Clara proposed one afternoon, spreading sketches across his bed. Respectable. A place for families traveling through, with a restaurant instead of a saloon. You'd give up the whiskey trade? I've seen enough of what whiskey does to men. And women? She touched his face. I want to build something new. Something ours. Ours. He studied the plans, seeing her dreams taking shape in ink and hope. I like the sound of that. There's just one problem. What's that? I need a business partner. Someone good with his hands. Someone who can handle trouble if it comes calling. She smiled. Know anyone who might be interested? Might. He'd probably want some guarantees, though. Such as partnership in all things, not just business. That could be arranged. And a proper courtship, man's got to have some standards. She laughed. How proper are we talking? Dinners, walks, church on Sundays. He pulled her close. And maybe some improper kissing when no one's looking. I think I could manage that. The day Ethan finally left his sickbed, the whole town seemed to turn out. Word had spread about their plans, and suddenly everyone had opinions and offers of help. About time we got some respectability around here. Mrs. Patterson declared, a proper hotel will bring in decent folk. Could use the business. The general store owner agreed. New people means new customers. Even Gruff Pete from the livery offered to help with construction. Man saves a town. Town ought to help him build a future. Sheriff Morrison pulled Ethan aside. You planning on staying put then? Seems like... Good. Could use another steady gun hand if trouble comes calling. Unofficial-like, of course. Of course. And Cole, that thing with the garrisons, might be there's paper on you in other territories. Might be that paper could get lost, what with you being an upstanding businessman and all. Ethan met his eyes, understanding the gift being offered. Appreciate that, Sheriff. Don't mention it, ever. That evening, Ethan and Clara walked to the site of the old saloon. The ashes had been cleared, leaving a blank canvas of possibility. Scared? Clara asked, slipping her hand into his. Terrified, he admitted, but the good kind. There's a good kind of terrified. The kind that means you've got something to lose, something worth fighting for. She leaned against him, careful of his still tender side. We're really doing this, building a life together. If you'll have me, proper-like, as promised. Ethan Cole, is that a proposal? He turned to face her, pulling something from his pocket. It was a simple ring, gold with a small stone that caught the dying light. Bought it off Mrs. Abernathy. Said it was her mother's. It's not much, but it's perfect. Tears sparkled in her eyes. Ask me. Clara Rosewood, you saved my life in every way that matters. Will you? Yes. I didn't finish. Don't care. Yes to all of it. Yes to marriage, to partnership, to whatever comes next. Yes, Ethan, always yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her as the sun set behind them, painting the desert in shades of gold and promise. When they finally parted, both were smiling. So what now? Clara asked. Now we build a business, a life, a future. He looked at the empty lot that would soon hold their dreams. Think we can do it? Together we can do anything. As they walked back to town, hand in hand, Ethan felt something he'd never experienced before the absence of the need to run. For the first time in years, he was exactly where he wanted to be. The past would always be there. Sarah and Tommy, the garrisons, all the ghosts that had driven him across the territories. But they were fading now, eclipsed by the promise of tomorrow. And tomorrow, he thought, looking at Clara's profile in the lamplight, looked brighter than any sunset he'd ever ridden toward. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, one of those perfect desert days where the sky seemed to stretch forever and the air held just a hint of coolness before the heat took hold. Ethan stood before the cracked mirror in his room at the boarding house, fumbling with his string tie for the third time. Having trouble. Samuel Rosewood appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his best suit. Haven't worn one of these since... Ethan paused, realizing he couldn't remember. Been a while. Samuel crossed the room and took over the tie. his weathered hands steady despite the tremor that had developed since the fire. Nervous? Should I be? Most men are on their wedding day. I nearly fainted when I married Clara's mother. He smiled at the memory. Course, that might have been the heat, or the fact that her father was cleaning his rifle throughout the ceremony. Ethan chuckled. Subtle. As a stampede, but we made it work. 32 years before the fever took her. Samuel finished the tie and stepped back. You'll do right by my girl. With my life. Already proved that. I'm talking about the everyday things. The mornings when she's cranky. The nights when old wounds ache. The times when staying is harder than leaving. I'm done leaving. Samuel studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you are. Come on, then. Got a wedding to get to. The church was packed. It seemed every soul in Dust Creek had turned out, cramming into pews and lining the walls. Mrs. Abernathy had outdone herself with flowers, desert blooms, and imported roses, creating splashes of color against the simple wooden interior. Doc Morrison stood as Ethan's best man, while Mrs. Patterson would stand with Clara. Reverend Mitchell, a young man who'd arrived just months before, looked almost as nervous as Ethan felt. Big crowd, he murmured. Folks here take their celebrations seriously. After what this town's been through, Doc Morrison said, they need something to celebrate. The murmur of conversation died as the church doors opened. First came Mrs. Patterson, beaming in her Sunday best. Then Clara appeared, and Ethan forgot how to breathe. She wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered and restored. The ivory silk caught the light streaming through the windows, making her seem to glow. Her auburn hair was pinned up with small white flowers, a few curls escaping to frame her face. But it was her smile that stopped his heart radiant, confident, and meant only for him. Samuel walked her down the aisle with evident pride, and when they reached the altar, he placed Clara's hand in Ethan's with a gruffness that didn't quite hide his emotion. Dearly beloved, Reverend Mitchell began, his voice gaining strength as he continued. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Clara Rosewood and Ethan Cole. In a world often marked by violence and uncertainty, their love stands as a testament to hope and redemption. Ethan barely heard the traditional words, lost in Clara's eyes. When it came time for the vows, he found his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Clara, you found me when I was lost, healed me when I was broken, and gave me a reason to stop running. I promise to stand beside you, to protect you, to build with you, and to love you until my last breath. You are my home, my heart, my redemption, today and always. Clara's eyes shimmered with tears. Ethan, you came into my life like a storm, challenging everything I thought I knew about safety and propriety. You showed me that sometimes the greatest risk is not taking one. I promise to stand with you, to fight beside you if needed, to build our dreams together, and to love you with a fierce devotion that will never waver. You are my choice, my partner, my forever, today and always. The rings, Reverend Mitchell asked. Doc Morrison produced them simple gold bands that Ethan had commissioned from the territorial capital. As they exchanged them, Clara whispered, No more running. No more running, he agreed. Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Arizona, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Cole, you may kiss your bride. The kiss was tender, a promise sealed before God and community. The church erupted in cheers and applause, years of frontier hardship momentarily forgotten in the joy of new beginnings. The celebration moved to the town square, where tables groaned under the weight of food donated by every household. Musicians struck up lively tunes, and soon couples were dancing on the packed earth. Ethan and Clara moved through it all in a happy daze, accepting congratulations and good wishes. Never thought I'd see the day Ethan Cole got himself churched, a familiar voice drawled. Ethan turned to find Jake Henderson, his arm still in a sling from their confrontation months ago. The man looked older, worn down by his brush with death and the humiliation that followed. "Jake," Ethan said carefully, his hand moving instinctively toward where his gun usually rested, except he wasn't wearing it today. "Peace," Jake said, raising his good hand. "Came to pay my respects, and maybe apologize. I was a fool. Let whiskey and pride nearly get me killed." "Water under the bridge," Clara said, though her tone suggested the water was still pretty muddy. "Appreciate that. Ma'am, Mrs. Cole." Jake touched his hat. "You two take care now. Some of us had to learn the hard way what matters. You figured it out before it was too late." He melted back into the crowd, leaving Ethan and Clara to exchange glances. "That was unexpected," Clara said. "Town's changing. People too. Maybe." "Speaking of change," Clara pulled him aside, away from the main celebration. "I have a wedding gift for you." "Clara, you already gave me everything by saying yes. This is different." She handed him an envelope. Inside were official documents, the deed to the saloon property, but also something else. Papers declaring the formation of the Coal and Coal Trading Company, with licenses for freight, goods, and hospitality services. Coal and Coal. "Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" she smiled. "I spoke with Mr. Patterson from the freight company. He's looking to retire, wants to sell his roots. With Blackwood's money and our plans for the hotel, we could expand, bring real commerce to Dust Creek, make it a proper town." Ethan stared at the papers, seeing not just a business opportunity, but a future root so deep they'd be impossible to tear out. "You've been busy." "I've been motivated. This is our chance, Ethan, not just to survive, but to thrive, to build something that lasts." He pulled her close, marveling at this woman who saw possibilities where others saw only desert and dust. "Have I told you lately that you're remarkable?" "Not in the last hour." "Shameful oversight. You're remarkable, Mrs. Cole." "So are you, Mr. Cole." They rejoined the celebration as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Sheriff Morrison gave a speech about new beginnings and the courage to change. Mrs. Abernathy tearfully declared it the finest wedding Dust Creek had ever seen. Even Pete from the livery stable was spotted wiping his eyes during the toasts, as twilight painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Ethan found himself standing with Clara at the edge of the square, watching their community celebrate. Their community. The word still felt foreign but good. "No regrets?" Clara asked, leaning into his side. "Only one." She looked up, concerned. "What?" "That I didn't ride into Dust Creek sooner." She laughed, the sound bright as bells. "Better late than never. Dance with me. Here, now. Right here, right now." He pulled her into his arms as the distant music drifted on the evening air. "I want to remember this moment. You, me, our town, our future, all of it." They swayed together as stars began to appear overhead. Around them, the celebration continued. But for Ethan and Clara, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. "I love you," Clara murmured against his chest. "I love you too, more than I have words for." "Then show me, every day for the rest of our lives." "That's a promise I intend to keep." Later, as they prepared to leave for their wedding night at the best room in Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house, their hotel being still in the planning stages, the whole town gathered to see them off. Rice flew through the air in extravagance in the desert, and good wishes followed them down the street. In their room, decorated with more of Mrs. Abernathy's flowers and lit by soft lamplight, Ethan and Clara faced each other as husband and wife. "We did it," Clara said, wonder in her voice. "We actually did it. The wedding or the staying alive long enough to have one." "Both?" She moved into his arms. "I was so afraid. Ethan, when you were shot, when I thought I might lose you." "Shh." He kissed her forehead. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now. Mrs. Cole. Good. She pulled his head down for a proper kiss. Because I have plans for you. Oh, big plans. Starting with the hotel, expanding to the freight business, maybe even a newspaper eventually. Dust Creek is going to grow, and we're going to grow with it. All that tomorrow, Ethan said, pulling the pins from her hair. Tonight is just for us. Just for us, she agreed. As the lamp burned low and the celebration sounds faded from the streets, Ethan Cole held his wife and marveled at the journey that had brought him here. From a life of running and gunfighting to this love, belonging, purpose, the transformation seemed impossible. Yet here he was. Clara stirred in his arms. What are you thinking? About redemption, how it comes in forms we never expect. Like a stubborn woman who won't let you walk away. Exactly like that. He kissed her again. Thank you. For what? For saving me, in every way a man can be saved. We saved each other, she corrected. That's what partners do. Partners. The word that had once seemed foreign now felt like home, as sleep finally claimed them. Ethan's last thought was a prayer of gratitude to whatever force had guided him to Dust Creek, to Clara, to this life he never dared dream of. Outside, the desert stretched endless under the stars, but it no longer called to him with promises of escape. Everything he needed was right here, in this room, in this woman's arms, in this future they would build together. The wandering was over. Ethan Cole had finally come home. 5 years had passed since that perfect wedding day, and Dust Creek barely resembled the rough frontier town where a wounded gunslinger had once sought refuge. The Cole Hotel stood proud on Main Street. 3 stories of adobe and timber that represented not just a business, but a promise kept. Its restaurant had become famous throughout the territory for Clara's pies and Ethan's insistence on fair prices. The morning sun found Ethan on the hotel's wide porch, watching the street come alive. Freight wagons bearing the Cole and Cole Trading Company insignia rolled past, loaded with goods bound for settlements throughout Arizona. He smiled, remembering Clara's ambitious plans that wedding night. Every one of them had come true, and then some. Daddy, Daddy! A whirlwind of energy burst through the hotel doors. 4-year-old Sarah Cole launched herself into his arms, her auburn curls catching the light just like her mother's. Mama says breakfast is ready. Does she now? Ethan lifted his daughter high, eliciting squeals of delight. And what's Mama making this morning? Pancakes with berry syrup. Well then, we'd better hurry. Inside, the hotel dining room bustled with guests and locals alike. Clara moved between tables with practiced grace, her condition barely slowing her down despite being 7 months along with their second child. She caught Ethan's eye and smiled, that same radiant expression that still made his heart skip. There's my favorite outlaw, she teased, kissing his cheek as he settled Sarah into her special chair. Former outlaw, he corrected. I'm a respectable businessman now, remember? So respectable that Sheriff Morrison doesn't still call you when there's trouble? As if summoned, the sheriff appeared in the doorway, hat in hand. The years had added more lines to his face, but his eyes were still sharp. Morning, folks. Ethan, might have a word. Clara sighed. Just once. I'd like to get through breakfast without... It's not that kind of trouble, Morrison assured her. Got a telegram from Tucson. They're sending a territorial governor's representative. Wants to discuss making Dust Creek an official county seat. Ethan and Clara exchanged glances. County seat meant legitimacy, growth, a future beyond their wildest dreams from 5 years ago. When? Ethan asked. Tomorrow. Figured you two should know first. Being as how you've done more to build this town than anyone. After Morrison left, Clara sat down heavily, one hand on her expanding belly. County seat. Mama would have been so proud. Your mother would have been proud of you regardless. Ethan covered her hand with his. You've built something amazing here. We built it. Together. Together, he agreed. Then turned to Sarah. What do you think? Little one, should Dust Creek become even more important? Sarah, face covered in syrup, nodded enthusiastically. Can we get more horses? She's your daughter. Clara laughed, always thinking about horses. The day passed in preparation. The whole town threw itself into cleaning and organizing, wanting to make the best impression. Ethan found himself constantly in demand, checking on the freight operations, consulting with the bank president about expansion, helping Doc Morrison, now officially Dr. Morrison with a proper medical degree earned through correspondence, set up his new clinic. That evening, as had become their tradition, Ethan and Clara walked to the hill overlooking Dust Creek. The town spread below them, lamplight beginning to twinkle in windows as the sun set, where once there had been perhaps 24 buildings. Now there were over 100. The school Clara had championed stood next to the church. The newspaper office printed weekly editions. There was even talk of bringing in telephone lines. Look what love built, Clara said softly, leaning against him. Love and stubbornness. The Cole family specialties. She winced suddenly. Oh, what's wrong? Nothing. Baby's just active tonight. She took his hand, placing it on her belly. Feel. Ethan felt the movement, still awed by the miracle of it, even after Sarah. Strong one. Like the father. Smart like the mother, I hope. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their town prepare for sleep. Then Clara spoke, her voice thoughtful. Do you ever miss it? The freedom, the adventure? Ethan considered. 5 years ago, he might have lied, given her the answer he thought she wanted. But marriage had taught him the value of truth. Sometimes, he admitted, on nights when the wind blows just right, I remember what it felt like to have nothing but my horse and the horizon. But then, he turned her to face him. Then I look at what I have now, and I realize that was never freedom. That was running. This you, Sarah, our life here, this is real freedom. The freedom to choose who I want to be. And who do you want to be? Yours, always yours. She kissed him then, soft and sweet, until Sarah's voice interrupted from below. Mama, Papa, Mrs. Abernathy says, come quick, there's riders coming. They hurried down to find a small group of travelers arriving at the hotel. Not the territorial representative, he wasn't due until tomorrow. These were settlers, a family by the look of them, trail-worn and weary. Welcome to Dust Creek, Clara called out. You folks need rooms. The man dismounted, helping a woman down from the wagon. 2 children peered out from the canvas cover. Much obliged. Ma'am, been riding for days. Heard this was a good town for families. The best, Ethan said, stepping forward to help with their bags. Come on in, we'll get you settled. As they worked to accommodate the new arrivals, Ethan caught Clara watching him with that expression he'd come to know well, pride mixed with love. What? Just remembering another traveler who rode into town looking for a room. Turned out pretty well for him. Best decision he ever made. Later that night, after Sarah was asleep and the hotel had quieted, Ethan found Clara on their private balcony, brushing her long hair. The desert stretched endlessly beyond the town, stars scattered like promises across the sky. Nervous about tomorrow? He asked, taking the brush and continuing the nightly ritual they'd established. A little. This could change everything. Change isn't always bad, says the man who once told me he was no good at staying put. That man was a fool. This one knows better. He set the brush aside, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Whatever comes, we'll face it. Together. Always together. The next morning brought the territorial representative, a thin man named Jameson who seemed impressed despite himself. He toured the town, noting the businesses, the school, the plans for growth. Remarkable, he said over lunch at the hotel. 5 years ago, the reports called Dust Creek a dying town. Now look at it. Good people make good towns. Clara said simply. We just gave them reasons to stay and build. And reasons to come, Jameson added, gesturing to the dining room full of travelers and new residents. The governor will be pleased. Expect an official announcement within the month. After he left, the town celebrated. Music filled the streets, and impromptu dancing broke out in the square. Ethan and Clara watched from the hotel porch, Sarah between them, waving at everyone who passed. We did it, Clara breathed. We really did it. No, Ethan corrected, pulling his family close. We're doing it. Present tense, because this isn't an ending, it's just another beginning. As the sun set on Dust Creek's day of triumph, painting the desert in familiar shades of gold and crimson, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a man running from his past to a husband, father, and pillar of the community. From a town dying in the dust to a thriving center of commerce and dreams. It hadn't been easy. There had been challenges, setbacks, moments when the old urge to run had whispered in his ear, but each time, he'd looked at Clara, at Sarah, at the life they were building, and the whispers had faded. Love, he'd learned, wasn't just a feeling. It was a choice made daily, a commitment renewed with each sunrise. It was Clara's hand in his during the hard times. It was Sarah's laughter filling their home. It was the baby yet to come and all the dreams yet to be realized. Ethan? Clara's voice brought him back to the present. Where did you go? Just thinking about roads traveled and roads yet to come. Any regrets? He looked at his wife, his daughter, his town, his life. Not a one. Good. She stood, pulling him up with her. Because I have news. Doc Morrison thinks it might be twins. Ethan's eyes widened. Twins. Twins. She grinned at his expression. Still no regrets? He laughed, spinning her carefully around the porch while Sarah clapped in delight. Never, though we might need to expand the hotel again. Already have the plans drawn up. Of course you do. As night fell over Dust Creek, the Cole family retreated inside their hotel, their home, their dream made real. The town settled into peaceful slumber, secure in its future, proud of its past. And somewhere in the vast desert night, the wind carried the echoes of a love story that had transformed not just two people, but an entire community. A story that proved that sometimes the greatest adventures aren't found in running toward the horizon, but in having the courage to stop, to build, to love, and to call a place home. In Dust Creek, Arizona, that story continued to unfold with each new day, each new dream, each new life that chose to stop running and start living. The Wild West might have been tamed, but the wild, fierce love between Ethan and Clara Cole remained as untamed and beautiful as the desert stars above. And that, as they say in the territories, is how legends are born not from violence or gold or fame, but from the simple, extraordinary courage of two hearts choosing to build something lasting in a world of dust and dreams. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Ethan and Clara's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening to this story. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss what you thought about their adventure. If you enjoyed this tale of love conquering all in the American frontier, please subscribe to Wild West Night. Give this video a like and hit that hype button to help more people discover these stories of passion and redemption in the Old West. Until next time, partners.